Good afternoon and welcome to Thursday's edition of Virtual 4-H. We have a really great science experiment for you today and hope you are looking forward to that. My name is Sarah Moss, the 4-H Youth Development Agent in the Central Kansas District.
And I am Lindsay Muting, 4-H Youth Development in McPherson County. So today, our virtual 4-H lesson is called Color Changing Milk. So we asked you to gather a few supplies, and let me show you what I have here. So I have milk. And I actually have it, you can put it in whatever you have available. If that is a plate, a pie pan, a bowl. I actually have some lids to my stove pots and pans that is flat and clear on the bottom. So a nice flat spot that I have milk poured into. I also have food coloring today. I had 4 colors of liquid food coloring that I will try. Some cotton swabs and some liquid dish soap. And I've just poured a little bit into, it's actually like a little medicine cup, just to hold just a little bit of dish soap for me for our experiment. So the first step that we're going to do is to take our food coloring, and we want to put a couple drops of each color into our milk. And we're going to do it towards the center. And when I drop them in, I'm going to want them to be fairly close together. And I'll do a little red. All right, Miss Sarah, what are we going to do next?
All right, so right now you can see my bowl of milk, but I think it's important that we talk about hypothesis and what we think is going to happen. You know, when we did our Mentos and Diet Coke episode a couple of weeks ago, we talked a little bit about hypotheses. And what an hypothesis is a prediction. What do we think is going to happen? So Miss Lindsay has placed food coloring in the milk. We have our cotton swabs and our dish soap. What do we think's going to happen if we just put a cotton swab in with no dish soap? Miss Lindsay, you want to demonstrate that?
Sure. I will take a cotton swab and I'll make a prediction. I think some color might absorb onto my cotton swab, but maybe not a lot of changes within the colors in the milk. So I'm going to take my cotton swab and press it right in the center of my colors.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think your prediction is that the cotton swab, you know, it absorbed some of that color, and it mixed a little bit of the color there in the middle, but that was about it.
Yep, look at that, just a little bit. I think it just kind of took up a little bit. There's a little spot of red, some green, and blue kind of brought up, kind of left a hole of some white there in the middle.
All right, so what happens if you dip that Q-tip in some milk? or I mean, not in the milk, we've already done that, in the dish soap.
Okay, so I'm going to use the same cotton swab. I'm just going to turn it around. Remember, we did another experiment with these, and they do have two sides we can use. So I'm going to dip that right into my liquid dish soap, the nice drop on the end. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go to my milk right in the middle and press down. Look at that.
Wow, that is pretty impressive. And look at that, it just continues.
It does.
Wow.
I'm gonna try one more time. That was really impressive. It's still kind of, look, I've taken my Q-tip out. It stayed there for what, maybe 15 or 20 seconds, and we still have some movement within our colors and the milk. Wow. I'm gonna try one more time. I'm gonna take a little drop, and where do we have a bunch of color? Over here, there is quite a bit of like green and blue. Dancing a little bit. I'm like, still, look over here. It is still making all sorts of colors.
You must still have, there must still be some soap that's still attached to some of that milk, and that color. Wow. And you know, something to really notice, you know, while the colors try to combine, they really stay for the most part separate.
That is really interesting. You can see the yellow and the green, blue and red. Now, blue and red together, we talked about this when we made molding dough. Blue and red are going to make our purple color, our K-State color. And you're right, Miss Sarah, I don't see purple in our milk, but I do see blue and I do see red. Still a little movement in there, but it's kind of slowed down a little bit. I wonder if I put a little drop of soap kind of where it's still moving, if it would make any change. Little shadow there.
It doesn't really look like it's
Not
doing
too much.
anything there.
Few spots here that are really still active, still moving a lot, but that's kind of the most movement is just around those areas. So why did this happen?
Well, you know, I think there's some molecules, right? I mean, milk has molecules, and we know milk is made up of primarily water, but there's also some fat molecules in milk as well. And, you know, I think that for some reason, when you put that dish soap in there, the color just spreads, and it decides that it wants to adhere to those fat molecules, and it spreads throughout the milk.
So is that because of the food coloring, or the milk, or the dish soap?
Well, I don't know. What, you know, that's something to think about with a hypothesis, right? You know, what caused that? And, you know, Miss Lindsay, you initially hypothesized, right, that if you put the Q-tip in, what would happen?
Nothing. They would just absorb.
And it did. And then with the soap, then we determined something else happened. And, here's the thing. This is the thing that I love. While you do not have to be a super, super smart, sciencey person, you can think of these things as to why it might have done whatever and do some research. You can have a hypothesis. For some reason, when you make a hypothesis, there is a rationale as to why you've made that prediction. Something has caused you to believe that. So you do have some knowledge. You do have some knowledge.
So as I look at this, and what I have found out is that it really has nothing to do with the food coloring. The food coloring is just what makes this experiment beautiful for us to watch and to look at. But what happens is when that dish soap goes into the milk, the dish soap is actually a molecule that they call bipolar. And part of that molecule loves water, and part of it hates water and wants to connect to other things. So that soap molecule, when put into the milk, is actually trying to connect to all of the fat molecules that it can find within that milk. So those little soap molecules are bouncing everywhere, up and down and around as fast as they can, trying to find some fat molecules to grab onto. And that food coloring just happens to be in the way. So as those molecules race around my lid here, it's pushing and pulling and taking some of those molecules under it. And that is what creates the beautiful art picture that we have here.
So, Miss Lindsay, tell us, what kind of milk was it that you used?
That's a great question. So today I had 2% milk. Now, what do we know about the fat content and what kind of milk we have? So we usually have whole milk, then we go down to a 2% milk, a 1%, and a skim or a fat-free milk. We also have like a cream and a half and half. Those would have even higher fat content. So as we go down from whole milk, 2%, 1%, skim milk, fat-free milk, the fat content within the milk drops down throughout all those times. So a really cool next hypothesis to make would be, this was 2% milk. You got to see 2% in action. What kind of milk do you have in your home? Do you have whole milk? Do you have skim milk? Do you have any cream around? Could we try this with different varieties of milk? See if one works better than another. Do you have a hypothesis of which might work the best and have more movement of color, and which might have the least movement of color?
Yeah, so Miss Lindsay, I have some milk here at my house. Are we game for making another hypothesis and trying another kind of milk?
Sure.
All right, let me switch my camera around here. Okay, so I'm going to put in my food coloring. And just so everyone knows, the kind of milk that I have here is lactose-free milk. Already seeing a few differences here.
I thought it was interesting on mine as well, not with this experiment, but I felt like my blue color, when I put the food coloring in the milk for blue, really spread. And my red, I feel like, was the one that spread the least before we put the soap in. Just when we put the droplets in, it was interesting how the same amount of drops were bigger or smaller for different colors.
Yeah, all right. So I do have a little assistant here, so I'm going to move some things. Okay, so here we go. Dipping in the soap. Okay, so my hypothesis, honestly, is that there's really not a whole lot of difference because lactose, they just take out the lactose. Now, maybe lactose has a little fat in it. I don't know, but I guess we'll see. Let's see what happens here. All right, look at that. Now, my green food coloring is probably a little older. I see it kind of chunking up over here, so I'm gonna do another little dip here and see what happens. And that, oh, look at that. Wow. So really, it for the lactose free, it really didn't do any different than the 2%. But I wonder, do you have whole milk at home? What might whole milk look like compared to what Miss Lindsay and I just did?
And if you had a skim milk or a fat-free milk, would there be any movement at all? Is there still, how much fat is really in a skim? Would it be enough for those molecules to move around the food coloring? I would love to see a picture if somebody was able to do this experiment with a different kind of milk. I'm going to show mine one more time.
I completely agree. And so we would love to see your pictures. Conduct this experiment at home, of course, with adult supervision and some assistance, and see what your pictures are of the food coloring and the milk. And wow, Miss Lindsay, why don't you talk a little bit because yours is still going.
That is crazy. It's almost still, but then there's just a few spots. It's still trying to find some more fat molecules and pushing that color around just a little bit more. Ooh, there's a spot of red kind of coming up. Very fun. Well, I hope that you enjoyed seeing this beautiful picture and learning about our soap and milk and food coloring experiment for color changing milk today. Make sure that you come back tomorrow. 1:30 will be Photography Friday. So try this experiment at home. Let us know how it goes, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.
And speaking of Photography Friday, if you haven't already submitted your photograph of pets and people, don't forget to do that. We want to see those. We'll see you tomorrow.